Greetings, mortals, and welcome. Please present your tickets for validation. Thank you. Your existence has been acknowledged, and you have been granted access every Thursday and Friday. You will be accompanying your guides, Krista and Brandy, along with their world-renowned guest. They will be exploring an intriguing tendril of what humans refer to as reality each week, as they strive to advance you further down the path to the truths of your physical earth and what lies on the other side. Remember to please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times, and do not exit until the craft has come to a complete stop.
Hey, welcome everybody.
Welcome everybody.
Having a good Friday night. How are you, Brandy?
Happy Friday. You know, besides the heat, I mean, I know we were just discussing this, when we were backstage, but oh my gosh, this can stop now. I would like to have June. Let's have June.
Before we have August. Yeah.
I know, because what had happened was, let me tell you the story, because I was running a little late. I'm trying to get the dogs out, right? Well, my dogs have what I would call wanderlust. They just wander off, and they have selective hearing, and they don't hear you when you're calling them to come back until you have to walk all the way over to get them, right? And then they're like, oh, there she is. There's Mom. Hey, they're not deaf. Trust me, they're not deaf. I mean, they can hear me with the cheese wrapper at a mile's distance, right?
Right.
So then my little wiener dog, the little black one, he decides he's going to start running off in the cornfield tonight. And I'm like, there's no way. I've got flip-flops on. I can't go out in the cornfield. So I had to run all the way over there. And boy, I was yelling and cussing. I'm glad nobody could hear me.
Yeah, I bet. I'd have been too. And
so then I come back, and then my little brown wiener dog, he's just like rolling and dragging himself through the yard. And I'm like, y'all have lost your mind. I'm not doing it anymore.
Exactly. I get it. It's funny. Well, the heat's just miserable here. I feel sorry for the people that work outside because it's just awful.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So I've got frizzy hair. I washed it this morning and I brushed it. And that's where I'm at.
I'm still sweating right now, and I'm inside, and I've been inside for about like 20 minutes.
I don't know if there's something going on with my air conditioner, but I had to turn it up because it's not shutting off.
Oh,
it's set on 72, so I turned it up to 73, and it's still running. And if it still keeps going, I'm going to turn it up one more. But man, that's just hot. But it says it's 73 in here now, so that's a little warm.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't listened to see if mine was shutting off.
Yeah.
It's so miserable. It's too early for this.
Mm-hmm. Right. I talked to Letitia today, and she was saying the same thing. Yeah.
It is too early. I'd like to have my June.
Yeah.
I think we lost June already. We just lost it.
Right. Exactly. You got any big plans for the 4th?
No, I probably am going to be working, so I will be here in town.
Gotcha. So I actually, believe it or not, I am going to O'Fallon. They have their big once-a-year fair, their Freedom Fest, they call it. And usually we just go watch the fireworks. That's all we usually do. However, this year they have Bret Michaels from Poison, and it's a free concert. So guess who's going to see Bret Michaels for free?
Right.
Go to that. So I went ahead and I took off on that Friday. So,
well, they're having that. What is it, next week or sometime soon? That Rockin' Across America or whatever that thing is with Kid Rock and all that's going to be here in town. I'm going to be hiding.
Yeah, I wish we could have got tickets for that. That would have been great.
They still have tickets.
Do they?
They still have a few tickets, but I'll tell you what, I'm just going to hide. I am not going to fight that. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I get you.
Not with it being this hot, for sure. No.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm gonna not waste any more time. Do you want to do a quick lineup for the week's shows, and then we'll go ahead and bring Miss Linda up.
Yeah. One quick thing before we get started. July 13th is our event at Malvern Manor with Josh Hurd, which is the owner of the property. It's going to be a great time. We'll be having dinner, and then we'll be ghost hunting all night. If you would like to have tickets, they're on Blondes and Booze on Eventbrite. Should be the first one that pops up.
And I can chat.
All right. And then, okay, of course, our lineup is Monday nights at 8 p.m. It is Texas Front Porch with myself and Tex. On Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central, it is Beyond BMR with his co-host Krista. On Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central, it is Inhumanoids with Barton Nunnelly and his wife Letitia. Thursday afternoons at 12 p.m. Central, it is a Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Thursday evenings, of course, it's us, Blondes and Booze at 8 p.m. Central. On Fridays, again, at 7 p.m. Central, it's Blondes and Booze. On Saturdays at 8 p.m. Central, our friend Paranormal Paul has a show called Paranormal Among Us. Check it out. Don't forget, BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, has a new late night show that comes on at 11 p.m. Central on Saturday nights. Check it out. And on Sundays at 5 p.m., it is Truth or Tinfoil with myself and Randy Goldberg. And at 7 p.m., it's Tex and Daniel Devo with our newest episode of Infamous Minds.
There you go. Very cool. All righty. I'm going to go ahead and bring Linda up. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you for coming.
I'm doing well.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Three Missouri girls here.
I know. We've got three corners covered. We got three corners of Missouri covered.
Right.
We just needed one more, just to cover, the whole state.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. There you go. Well, we appreciate you coming on tonight. And last night we did a show. It was all on dogmen, and tonight's Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself? And I will continue throughout the night to drop your link for your channel in chat. So everybody, if you have not done so, please subscribe to Linda. She does have some amazing guests on her shows. So
Yes.
anyway, yeah.
And interesting, you were talking about Dogman, because way back before I started doing the Bigfoot stuff, we did have one show about Dogman, and it was with D.A. Roberts. You probably know him. He's also a Missouri guy. Yeah, he was local. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, a little bit about me. I started doing UFO research back in the 90s. So my background is UFO research, paranormal research. And I did a lot of remote viewing, psychic training, things like that, traveled a lot across the country doing that. Mm-hmm. So that's really more my background. And so I've only been in the Bigfoot world for a little over about a year and a half now. And it was just kind of by accident that I got into that. I did an interview with Scott Nelson of the Sierra Sounds, who analyzes Sierra Sounds, and I put that out, and it did really well. And so I got this following of Bigfoot people. So I started just interviewing a lot of people that had Bigfoot experiences. Did one show down at Forsyth, Missouri with a family that had some really good documentation. It's called Bigfoot the Limits. They had done a few other shows, but I did more in depth, I think, with showing all the things that had happened at their place. So, it just kind of took off, and a year and a half later, I'm still doing Bigfoot interviews. So, yeah.
Wow. Very cool.
Also did the film Byways of Bigfoot, where I actually got out and did, research on our own and filmed us on site, boots on the ground kind of thing along the Niagara River.
Okay. And where can people find that?
Oh, it's on my channel too.
On your channel too. Okay.
Yeah, you can just find it on my channel, Byways of Bigfoot. It's Ron Bowles. He's also a Missouri guy from right here in Springfield. A lot of Bigfoot people know Ron. He's in the show. He's one of the researchers, kind of a head researcher with us, along with several other people. So, yeah, we got out and filmed a lot along the river.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the Niagara, isn't that around like Lebanon area or something?
It runs kind of from Marshville through Bennett Springs. That big spring at Bennett Springs State Park leads into the Niagara, and then it goes all the way to Lake of the Ozarks. It's about 200 miles of river footage that we got about half of it, not quite half of it, maybe covered in this one episode.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, very cool. Interesting.
Wow. Well,
Let's-
Chris and I, we do most of our research east of us, and it seems that you do everything right there in the west of us. So that I find very interesting because for some reason I don't know why we don't go there more often. Like we told you, backstage that's where we had our Bigfoot encounter, our close encounter. Let's just call it that, our close encounter, and I find it very interesting over there, and the environment is just prime for Bigfoot to inhabit, so I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about that one.
Well, we have so many rivers here and a lot of wooded area, a lot of national forest, but even outside of the national forest, there's just a lot of hills and hollows and easy places for them to be. And just a lot of sightings even right here really close to Springfield, Missouri, amazingly very close. It kind of one of the first episodes we did with the Dogman episode where D.A. Roberts was with us, we went to a lake and heard a wood knock, and I had never heard a wood knock. I knew nothing about Bigfoot. Heard this wood knock, and I said, "What was that?" Because it was really loud. And of course he knew. He said, "I think it was a wood knock," And then later on we found out there'd been a lot of Bigfoot sightings around that lake. So
wow, interesting. Yeah. I think Missouri is underestimated as far as sightings, because we really do have a lot. And Bigfoot and Dogman. Actually, Brandy and I just have recently received a couple of Dogman encounters, around the Ozark Mountains and all that good stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, I know. Not to mention it's beautiful. There is that. It's a nice place to visit, everyone. It is beautiful over there. So, I guess for me, it's like in your area, how many, do you think your sightings and encounters have escalated with more encroachment of human inhabitants? Do you think that is happening over there?
It's hard for me to say because I haven't been in the field very long, but Ron Bowles has, his sighting was way back in the 70s, I think it was. So he has, a lot of experience with that. I don't know if there's more, but I think people are definitely more willing to talk about it. That's what I see is it's become a more popular subject than it used to be. So people are more willing to say, hey, but I just heard this since we made Byways of Bigfoot. I just found out about 2 cases that was seen back in the 80s, and they didn't know it was Bigfoot because there just wasn't enough information out there for them to identify this thing as Bigfoot. They were looking for some kind of a creature that may have escaped the zoo. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it was, it had kind of features that it was probably juvenile they saw, but it was kind of features like a monkey, they thought, and they just couldn't figure out what it was. 2 different farms saw this. They were across the road from one another, could have been the same Bigfoot. But that was back in the 80s. And, no one in the community was thinking Bigfoot. They were all thinking, well, obviously somebody, let somebody out of a zoo,
Right.
It's weird. I think there's probably a lot more sightings that people have and don't realize that what they're looking at or what they're seeing or hearing or whatever. So there's a lot more information now, a lot more the way of shows, your show, my show, lots of shows out there where people are able to hear the vocals. They kind of know what to look for in the way of structures. So I don't know if there's more sightings or if there's just a lot more information and knowledge.
Yeah. Or that people are not so afraid to come forward, and talk about it. Because I think that was a big thing too.
Well, I believe the same thing. With Linda, with a podcast like yours and a podcast like ours, and it's it gives them all these avenues to talk about things that were taboo, I guess, back in the day.
Exactly.
And now it's you can talk about anything you want to, and we're all there's somebody out there that has had a similar experience, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think they're pretty prevalent actually. When you start talking to people, and whenever I look at the areas around me where they have been seen, where are they not?
Right.
It's kind of
it is right.
Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. Even where I live up outside, a suburb outside of St. Louis. And, there's encounters all around me and dogmen too. And I just find that amazing because I'm in the suburbs, and you don't have to live in the sticks to have these encounters. I've heard of an encounter down by the St. Louis Arch with a dogman. How crazy is that? Because us three from Missouri, we know how busy that area is,
Right. Because that reminds me of a time, Crystal, we were sitting at your house and we were out on the back porch and we were just sitting there and we had heard this sound and it was in the daytime and we could not identify that sound. And it was like, I can't even describe it really. I mean, it was just like a long thing, but we couldn't identify where it came from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess they could be anywhere.
They can be. Yeah.
I think so. When we first started filming Byways of Bigfoot, I was just going out at these conservation areas by myself during the middle of the day and filming, just to get some shots of nature shots out there to use in the film. Never, ever thinking, that there was that prominent of a number of Bigfoot that might be in the area. And then since then, we found evidence right there. And then also other people have talked about Bigfoot just being very, very close by. So, I think next time I might take someone with me.
Yeah, you should. Never go alone. I
do recommend. And I don't know. I've heard a lot of things. And Linda, I want to ask your opinion about this. I've heard a lot of people say if you're female, you should really never go alone.
Yeah, I didn't have any fear. There again, I wasn't expecting to run into a Bigfoot in that conservation area. And I was never too far from the car, not that far. But and I didn't hear anything or see anything or have any kind of a sense or a feel of anything. But I realize, now it's like maybe that wasn't the wisest thing to do. I think that it would have been probably best to have someone with me. But but sometimes you just don't have anyone to go with you, so you just have to go film yourself.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's keeping me a lot. I don't have anybody. I live probably about 30 miles south of the Mark Twain National Forest, and there's a lot out here that I can go explore, but finding somebody to go with me on the days that I can is very hard to do. And it's just, there's so much to explore. It's just like, you have to really make the time to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. I mean, we were not filming that many days along the river. And every time we went out with the research group, we found footprints. We found unusual tree breaks, not just, a broken tree limb is one thing, but we found twisted, the twisted odd tree breaks, and then a footprint right below it. So if we would have, and if we ever get back out and do any more filming in that area, we'll explore a lot more. We certainly didn't expect to find as much as we did.
Wow. Pretty amazing. I'll have to look up your film because I haven't saw that yet. And I
haven't seen it either. So write it down, Krista, and then you can give it to me or send me the link.
Yeah, I wrote it down so I can go back and find it.
I didn't know it was on your channel. I guess I should have looked. I didn't know it was on there. I should have looked for that. We were just going through episodes and I was like, I didn't see it. So I guess I need to look.
Yeah.
It's there, definitely there. Yeah.
Yep. I'll definitely go back and watch because I do watch. If it's a Bigfoot documentary and people are out in the woods, I'm watching it.
Yeah.
Thank you, BMR.
Thank you, BMR. He says you're great, Linda.
Yep. And for people to subscribe to you, and I have seen in chat that a lot of people said they have subscribed to you. So yeah, awesome. Appreciate everybody subscribing. Let's roll back. You said that you came from a UFO and paranormal background.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the 90s, we had a flap of UFOs that came through this area, and I immediately got invested in a group that did some research. And I was a hypnotherapist for a lot of years, so I volunteered to work with people who felt like they'd had like abduction situations. So I did a lot of hypnosis with people firsthand. Those are firsthand accounts that you hear all kinds of things. And it was kind of out on a limb at that time. Now it's not, how you progress with your understanding of subject matter. Yeah, I took groups out, traveled a lot with investigations all over the country and even into some foreign countries, looking for and talking with people who had, interesting and unusual UFO encounters. It was a really exciting time. I'm not so much on the ground looking at UFO research today, but I still keep up with it. I still, and I do a lot of interviews with people who have UFO stories.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so you said the UFO thing. How young were you? I mean, like, is this something from a child? That's what I'm saying. Like, were you a kid when you got into this? Because for me, I will tell you, like with ghosts, I had my first ghost encounter when I was 5, and that's why I'm asking which formed me today.
Yeah. Well, I did not have any encounters until I was a little bit older, but when I was 40, I had my first ghost experience.
Gotcha.
And at that time, I was just kind of opening up to a lot of being more sensitive, being more aware. Mm-hmm. Because before that, it was just business and work and, all of the things that, hold your attention. But I was starting to really start to become more sensitive and aware. And I was in my living room. Mm-hmm. And it was a small living room that came off of an entrance hall. And I was sitting on the floor with my back to a corner, and there was a sectional sofa in that room. It was a really small room. My husband was sitting on the sofa, and a couple of ladies were sitting across from me. And I was there on the floor, but I just started feeling really uncomfortable, mm-hmm. That. And I wouldn't have put my finger on. I would never in a million years have said, "Oh, there's a ghost back here," but it just didn't feel comfortable anymore. So I said, "I think I'm going to get up. This just doesn't feel quite right." The lady across from me, she was real well versed with energy, seeing energy, and she could see some movement back there. And she didn't know what it was, but she said she could see movement back there. And then synchronicities is the name of the game with me. I mean, things just always kind of unfold, giving me the information I need, it seems like. So within a couple of days, I had a hypnosis client come to my house. And he walked in the front door. He goes down the hall. He doesn't say anything. Usually I start my sessions in that little living room. We just do an interview and kind of see what they want to accomplish and such. So he didn't do that. When I prompted him to go into the living room, he walked into my family room, looked outside, was looking through the sliding glass door, and then walked back to the hall. And he was standing there with his arms crossed. And I'm thinking, I don't know what's wrong. Something was obviously not right here.
Yeah.
And suddenly he says, I think my father used to live in this house. And that's what he was checking out to see for sure that this was where his father lived. And he pointed to that very corner where I felt uncomfortable. My friend saw the energy movement and said, and he died right there.
Wow.
So that was kind of an interesting revelation.
Yeah.
I could feel those things. And of course, I trusted my friend she could see things. She just couldn't tell what it was back there. She knew it was energy movement, though. But that was my first ghost encounter. Since then, I haven't had a lot of actual personal encounters. I've mostly just gone places and researched the areas and, just had a lot of fun doing that. Far more UFO cases than just ghost encounters. But I used to own a house that was haunted. This was weird. I was a real estate investor for a lot of years. And we bought rental properties. And we bought this house. People were living there when we bought it. Mm-hmm. And it was a little 2-bedroom house. I had kind of a finished out attic as well. It wasn't very big, but there was a family that lived there that I think they had 3 children. Mm-hmm. And they said, whenever we were looking at it to buy it, they said, hey, this house is haunted. I was like, oh, well, okay. So they started telling us all the things that were happening in the house. They had this little fire engine in one room, and they said that was the room that was mostly haunted. But this little fire engine was in the room, and the ladder would just go up and down, up and down, up and down, all by itself. Yeah. Lights would go on and off. Appliances would, go on and off all the time. They could hear sounds. And the neighbors told them when they moved in that it was haunted because they knew the history of the house. Wow. And apparently a woman had committed suicide in the attic and her children were downstairs when she did that. And that was a really sad case, but it seemed as if maybe her spirit, her unsettled energy, was still there in the house.
Oh, that's sad though,
Very.
It really is. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Tennessee Ridge Runner, Be Kind, and BMR. Thank you guys very much.
I know. Be Kind's been a member for 11 months. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Be Kind. We appreciate that. We appreciate all of you.
Yep. And Tennessee Ridge Runner, thank you for the memberships. We definitely appreciate all that. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you or take you off topic. So what happened with the house? Did you end up selling it?
Well, we did. We ended up selling it. The same people were living there, but that house was actually featured on a local TV station as the haunted house on Halloween time. It was that haunted.
Wow.
And it was known to be haunted. Everyone who was in the house, everyone who lived around the house, everyone knew that house was a haunted house. It was very kind of spooky.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. You're down there around Springfield. So I know Joplin isn't too terribly far, within an hour or so away from you. Are you familiar with the spook lights down there?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Been down there many times. Yeah.
Have you witnessed them yourself? And
yeah, there's a gravel road, a country road there that you can just go kind of hang out and wait for it. Sometimes it shows up, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Brandy, she went out there. You went out there.
I did. We couldn't get exactly on the road we needed to be on because now there's houses down through there and they get a little bit miffed if people are out there in the middle of the night looking. Mm-hmm. But if you go and it runs right parallel with it, but there's a road that's right with it, but you can see some strange things. Like I seen it looked like fireworks going off out there, like little sparks of light going on. And people have commented they've seen a blue light going off across and then going across the ground into the fields. And so it's not just that road. It's like that area. So I think there's some really high strangeness going on right there because there's no radiation readings. There's no gas bubbles or whatever they want to call it. There's none of that going on out there. And it's just happening. So that really intrigues me out there because I can't explain it, but I've seen it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's been there forever. I mean, Native Americans talked about it. It was just, it's been there forever. But in so many of the interviews that I do, that's one of the questions I always ask anymore. If, people are out there looking for Bigfoot, do they see any orbs? Do they see any lights? Do they have, any of that phenomenon? Almost always they do, whether it's associated with Bigfoot or not, we don't know. But they see them there. So I think orbs are fairly prominent.
Yeah, we actually have witnessed orbs ourselves being out in the woods. And my first encounter with orbs was at doing a haunted location inside a basement. And it was a big blue orb about the size of a softball. And I had never, I had always associated it as a ghost thing. Well, we were out at the LBL and we seen these orbs, different colors and different sizes. And it wasn't just one of us. There was like 10 of us out there and we were all seeing it. And so that was our first encounter with like being out in the woods. And right before that, Eye Shine was saw. And even here we were back there in March and we saw a bunch of orbs too. So
yeah.
Just, I don't know. They do go hand in hand. I can't explain it.
No, they do. And, I hear a lot of people talk about, they seem intelligent. They don't just seem like a ball of light floating around, that may just float off into the Neverland, but they seem intelligent. Like they know where they're headed. Like, they're almost interactive with you at times.
Yeah. Well, Greg Ogles, he, a friend of ours, he, goes out and I think it was while he was filming The Legend of the Downy Booger that he actually had intelligent responses with orbs. And so I just find that interesting. I really do.
Yeah.
I do too. I don't know what they are, but I think it would be wise for us to figure out, if this is some kind of a life form of some sort. I don't know. But also rods. Have you known of anyone who sees rods? I get that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that, but I don't know anybody personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just so much out there that we just don't know. And Brandy and I, we believe that it's all all intertwined, ghosts, aliens, the Bigfoot, all of it. We believe it's all, call us woo if you want, but maybe we are a little bit, we definitely believe it's all intertwined.
Yeah, I do too. I think that there's this overlay of some reality we're just not able to totally put our hands on as to what it is, but it's definitely there. And unique beings as they are in their own right, they're obviously coming and going and interacting in our reality that in a way that I don't think we fully understand.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with you. There's just so much out there, Speaking of which, the ghost, you're in Springfield. Have you been to the Pythian Castle?
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I had experiences at the Pythian before it became a well-known ghost destination tour spot.
Yeah.
It used to be the OCAC, which was an organization that helped people, with various things that they needed help with, but it's a local organization. And their offices were in there. They had that whole building, that whole huge building. And I was a volunteer. I did some volunteer work with some child abuse prevention programs. And so I was there doing training for a very long time. And one lady that I was working with there, she said she just didn't buy into the whole ghost thing. And, she was just, that's just people talking. One night she was there by herself. And all of a sudden she knew no one else was in the building. The doors were locked. She was just there doing some finish up work herself. And she started hearing footsteps, and she thought, who is that? And she started looking around, trying to see if she could find out who was in the building, and nothing. She went back to her desk, and again, footsteps, and she started hearing somebody whistling. It was just like one thing after another. No one was in that building. And she said she just had to stop working and go home. She just couldn't take it.
And she became a believer, right?
She became a believer really fast after that.
Oh,
So I think that I've taken that tour many times, and it's a really interesting tour. It's very long. You don't want to do it when it's really hot because that basement can get really warm at times.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. I haven't seen anything, kind of felt a few things, but I haven't really seen anything myself. Tried to get pictures of orbs, but I didn't.
Yeah, I used to belong with a paranormal task force out of St. Louis, and we used to hold events there 2 or 3 a year at the Pythian. So I've been there numerous times, and one of my favorite places. Did you ever walk the tunnel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we used to, whenever I would take a group down there, I'd be like, okay, I don't mind going first. Just remember, if you go first, though, you got to turn around and you're last. So, I would like a young kid or something, but yeah, it's a good place to go. Brandy, you've been there.
Yes, I've been there several times. Yeah,
that's what I thought you had. Yeah.
Well, I think it's really cool that they found a way to really open that up to the public and let people experience that.
Yeah, Tamara, she's done a lot to that place, her and her mom. Unfortunately, her mom passed away here, I think, just a couple of years ago, but yeah, they've done a lot to that place. So it's a beautiful building, and apparently it wasn't what it is now, I guess, when you first started going.
Yeah, it when I was there, when it was the office building, it was pretty run down at that point. Yeah, it's they've done a lot to it. They brought it into a facility, that you can have events there, and really nice. It's really quite a nice.
You know, she paid only like $150,000 for that building.
I know. I could kick myself. I remember when that thing auctioned and it sold for like pennies. I'm talking like $10,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
And why I didn't go to that auction? I went to auctions all the time. I was a real estate investor. I didn't go to that, and I could just kick myself for not buying that.
Yeah, you could have been the owner of the Pythian.
I could have. I could be doing ghost tours as we speak.
Right. That's right.
I think I would live in it too, though.
Yeah.
I think I would.
Yeah.
Well, it's big enough. You could certainly find some quarters there to live in it and still do ghost tours. It's huge.
Right.
Yeah. She actually lives on the the second floor there. Off, you can go up to the the tower. There's a door right there to the right, and that's her headquarters back there where she lives. She got her dogs and her cats, and there you go. All right.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really
I've seen a few questions out there. Everybody, please put them in all caps. I just put it out there again so Krista can see them. Because sometimes if we're talking, we don't notice necessarily just regular chat. But if you put them in all caps, we might be able to get those questions. But Linda, there was a question from, I think, Larry Berlin. He was wondering.
I got that one. Yep.
You got it?
One. Yep,
Okay.
right there. It says,
Okay.
Linda, have you done any investigations around Stockton Lake?
Yes, I have. UFO. There's a lot of UFO activity around that lake. I haven't seen anything personally, but I've done a lot of investigations where other people have seen things, and we've gone out and taken reports from that area. Did a lot of night watches out there trying to see something coming out of that water, because there's just a lot of UFO craft coming and going from that vicinity. So yeah, I'm really very well aware of the Stockton Lake area and the UFO activity there.
Wow, I had no idea down there around there. No idea at all. And did you say
there's
out of the water?
There are a couple of campgrounds kind of on the north west end. There are a couple of campgrounds there that seem to have more prominent activity. And sometimes it'll just be a UFO going across the water, and sometimes they'll be actually coming up and going in and out of the water. I've heard of that too. And then of course there's always the craft that's seen in the air. I'm not sure why that area is so prominent. There's doesn't seem to be contact with those. It's just mostly seeing the craft. I don't think I've heard of anyone having actual contact with aliens or anything like that. But it's mostly just seeing craft, that seem to be, it just seems to be around there all the time. But that northwest end seems to be more prominent, closer to the dam than the southern end.
Wow, I see a road trip in my future.
There you go.
Yeah. Or everybody needs to come over here. Come over here. Because we have Piedmont that is trying to become the UFO capital of Missouri, which is real close to me, and they've made a documentary on it and everything, and a lot of the evidence was compelling. I mean, I was like, well, maybe I should go out there, but then again, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know, because there are reports. There's a report in the same area of dogmen and Bigfoot, so I'm like,
right,
yeah. It's huge. I mean, like 500 people at that Piedmont thing. 500 people reported, seeing something that was. I think it was in the 70s whenever that happened. Though.
Yeah, there's some truth there.
Yeah. And of course, Buck Nelson, Mountain View. That's not far from there either. If you know that case or not, that UFO story. That was back a ways. That was more in the about 1950, 1947, something like that.
Yeah.
He was contacted by UFOs, and he used to do conferences at his farm right there in Mountain View.
Wow. That's interesting. Have you heard of Marley Woods?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Marley Woods. Did you know, have you ever heard of Ted Phillips that did research at Marley Woods?
Yeah.
He was my co-anchor on the radio show I had called Nunnelly.
Okay. So you know all about Marley Woods.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Have you been there?
No, I haven't been there. Every time we planned to go, and I don't know if this was something that the universe said, you will not go to Marley Woods or what, but it would storm, or there would be something would come up, and the trip would always get aborted. So I never made it out there.
Yeah. We had Thomas Ferrario on the show. And this has been a little bit ago, and that was his research area also. And just some of the things that's happened out there, and some of the creatures and the things they've seen, it's just like, it's amazing, amazing in a bad way. you know?
It's a lot like Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah. And what blows me away is, I have horses, so I'm a horse lover. And then, he talked about a horse spontaneously combusting, in the barn. I mean, that's just awful stuff,
Well, yeah, that kind of makes me wonder, though, because he has talked about that there have been health issues going on within the family. And, he was supposed to come back on the show, and that's prevented him from doing so. And I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it. Like, all his time spent there. Like, again, we're talking about, if it's like Skinwalker Ranch, we're talking about radiation. We're talking, all kinds of stuff that he could be just, bringing home to the house. And
that's possible. I know that he and Ted at one point were driving down in the area, and they saw this light in the sky, and they got out of the car. He said that was probably the dumbest thing they could possibly have done, but they both got out of the car, and it was like this light was kind of shining down on them, and they got back in the car. Ted got sick and threw up. He got sick as well, but didn't throw up. And he said within a real short time, his hair could turn completely white. And he started, I think he said he started having maybe some heart arrhythmia or something like that, you know. But obviously they were subjected to something with that light that was coming down, or if it was kind of a laser light or what it was, but it was shooting down on them.
Wow.
And probably should have stayed in the car. I don't know if that would have helped or not, but it might have.
Yeah, maybe not. And, that sounds similar to a lot of people who, get zapped too, with the Bigfoot, they say of, the nausea or, I've heard of people who, their heart starts acting up and, things like that. So there you go. Intertwined.
No, I don't know if I've ever heard of like radiation burn with Bigfoot, but certainly the zapping and that ill feeling, that is often described.
Yeah. And just awful stuff. So yeah, I know the area where it is, and there's a lot of weirdness in that area too. Absolutely. So let's talk about your book.
Okay. Yeah, it's brand spanking new. It just barely came out. It's Threshold to Encounters, and it's really about all of the years of research I did with UFOs and paranormal and remote viewing and intuitive remote viewing. It's a kind of a specialized type of remote viewing that I do. Mm-hmm. And then I bring Bigfoot into that, even though it's kind of new. It was like, wait a minute, I'm seeing too many correlations here, like missing time. I'm hearing Bigfoot people talk about missing time, and I know UFO people have missing time. And then we talk about batteries being drained, when you're out there in the field and all of a sudden all of the electrical equipment is not working anymore. It's like, that took me back to the old days of UFO research. When you get into a remote area, you can't bring enough batteries to last because they just drain. And cameras stop working and all kinds of things like that. So I started looking at that, and then even the ghost, even that's a little bit harder to bring into the Bigfoot phenomena. But the other day, someone was telling me about an experience that they had where they were seeing this image of a horse walking through the woods, and there was a Native American on top of the horse as they were watching it walk through the woods, and then it just disappeared. Yeah. And I said, that also happens with Bigfoot, of course. They'll just be walking along and poof, they're gone and disappear. So I'm thinking, well, some of that might be we're seeing the ghost of a Bigfoot, that because the correlation is very similar. When it's a Bigfoot, we say there is cloaking, but when it's someone or something that we can identify from the past, we just assume it's a ghost, but the behavior is the same. So it may just be our interpretation or definition of it, but they're very like experiences. Yeah. And also the sounds. Oh my goodness. So many Bigfoot encounters where they have the rushing up behind them, or, they have all of these sounds. And of course, with ghost activity, you have the same thing. You have these unusual sounds that you don't have there's nothing physical around you to explain where that's coming from.
Absolutely. We actually talked about it briefly last night. We were at the LBL, and it was middle of the afternoon. We were running the EVP sessions at one of the cemeteries, and nothing weird happened while we were there, but we went back and started listening to the recorder, and we picked up like sounds of metal twice, through EVP. So what was that? Martin Grove says he thinks it was a portal opening or closing.
Wow. Yeah.
Could be, Who knows? Who knows? I mean, there's so much to this whole phenomena. What are your beliefs? What do you think about when people talk about Mindspeak?
Well, that's my background. That's my strength. I mean, I did that as a business for a lot of years, teaching people how to become more sensitive and be able to be aware of Mindspeak. And Mindspeak's the term that's kind of used with Bigfoot. But otherwise, I would use it just as, being psychic or intuitive, being able to be perceptive with that. So I think it's a skill, and I think everyone can do it. And whether it be with Bigfoot or whether it be with, anything else or anyone else, I think that's very likely. I think the people who have those encounters of Mindspeak with Bigfoot are probably already very sensitive people that have the capacity to receive that information.
I would agree. And part of my thinking is too, do I believe that they're really hearing this stuff? Yes, I do. However, how do we know, or how do they know that it is a Bigfoot? Because as being into like the metaphysics and things like that, like the good along with the not so good can portray themselves as something, depending on what they want to hear. Like if someone wants to hear their loved one, they can hear something not so nice can come and portray as their loved one. Same thing, with the Bigfoot, I believe. How do they know that it's Bigfoot? You know what I'm saying? That's my only issue I have with the Mindspeak.
Yeah, I think I think it would be easy to be fooled. I think with all intuition, you really have to, take it with a grain of salt and prove it. But I do have a story I can share that might help to know how I at least, determined that. It's a remote viewing story. I've been doing some intuitive work, but it was mostly, that spiritual kind of intuitive work. It wasn't, hardcore like military remote viewing, like that. I'd never even heard of that before. So I went to a UFO conference, and this was before the U.S. military remote viewing program was talked about. This was way back when that just wasn't even declassified yet. And a man was there talking about a Russian program, a Russian remote viewing program. I'd never heard of it before. So I thought, well, that's a really interesting idea. That's a thought. So I came home from the conference and I really wanted to be able to do that, to be able to see something physical, to describe a place and to test it, to see if it was right or not.
Sure.
So I decided to get the phone book out and just, look and see if there was a phone number there. And it was a residential area. There's probably a house there. So, and I would just stand in the middle of the road thinking in my mind, I'm at that location, and look at it. So I knew how to put myself into a hypnotic state. I knew how to be intuitive at that point. So I just did the address, repeated the address to myself, told myself to get in to stand in the road and look at it and describe it from the outside. And what I saw was a baby blue colored house. And this was a time when blue houses were not very prominent, because it's been back there quite a ways. That was quite a long time ago. But there was a baby blue house, and every part of my being, and this is where I think you have to define your intuition works when you're right or wrong to know the difference. Every part of my being said, that's not the right house. No, just don't go there. It's kind of like whenever when you say something and you didn't describe it accurately, there's a part of your mind that self-corrects and says, no, you need to get better words because that isn't what you mean to say.
Right.
So it's kind of like that. But I knew that blue house wasn't right, and it wasn't. Whenever I viewed the correct house, it was white with a black roof and, one car garage. I mean, I got almost everything correct on it whenever I did look at it correctly. But there's a part of us, I think, that is fine-tuned on that level to know when we're connecting with something truthful or not truthful, if you're listening. Yeah. But you have to get pretty fine-tuned to be able to hear the difference.
Yeah, I would agree with you because, that's just my issue. People say, they've spoke to them and things like that. And I do believe, they're hearing something. Someone's talking to them. It's just my question is what, Yeah,
and it's not just that. I mean, just with intuition all the way around, without being able to prove it, it's really iffy, if as to what you're hearing or who you're talking to there, or if you're just talking to yourself mostly, your own thoughts. So defining that is really hard, and that takes a lot of really discernment and willingness to be wrong. That's the big thing.
Yes, absolutely. Bigfoot's there's just a lot to it, I think. With between the Mindspeak and the tree knocking, and you hear about the Sierra Sounds, and just it's like a whole new species of something that we're learning about.
Right. At first I went into this and really just honestly, just a flesh and blood, thing, that's all I was hearing and really thought that's what I was dealing with. And then as the interviews progressed, I started hearing a lot of strangeness. And at first I'm like, really? And I didn't know the people I was interviewing much. So, I didn't know if they were just out in left field or if there was something. But now, oh my goodness, 350 interviews later, there are so much more to Bigfoot than just a creature in the woods. That
Absolutely.
That was just something that was kind of an eye opener for me. That
Yeah.
this was behaving more like the ghosts, the aliens, the UFO community. That it was just amazing to me, all of the that was happening. Not to say that they aren't also flesh and blood. That's
Right.
also, it's difficult because I think we look at things just the way we are, and we don't generally appear and disappear. So,
Right.
but Bigfoot seems to have some capacity to kind of live in two worlds, and kind of like the Native Americans said, I think they live in two worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, I don't know. They amaze me. There, what Brandy and I witnessed, I heard it and I saw the moonlight shadow of it, but Brandy had actual visual, and it was definitely what I heard was flesh and blood. There's no doubt, So did I experience any orbs or anything like that? No, we did not.
I didn't. No.
That's why I'm, I agree with you. I think some of them can be flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Or I think they can be both. I think when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood. And when we can't see them, they're who knows where or what they are.
Right.
But, I think they can, and aliens too. Aliens seem to be, they're physical, solid, actual beings, or at least what people describe that have encounters with them. So, and those crafts have crashed. So, we know that those are physical things, but they can also disappear right in front of your face. Yeah. So where do they go? Is it just, and are they still there and we just can't see them? Is there just some means that they turn off or go into some frequency that we're just not able to perceive? We have pretty limited amount of perception as humans. Our range isn't real broad.
Right.
Do you think that being into the paranormal first has helped you with the Bigfoot side in I don't know, like believing more and understanding more? Or do you think that, just your investigations have done that for you?
No, I think that definitely helped. Just to make me more open-minded. I remember when I first started doing the UFO or got into the UFO community, and I was hearing people say, "Oh, my entire car was just taken up into a ship," and I go, "Oh, come on, get real!" That was just so far beyond anything I could imagine actually happening. People were telling stories, and I just couldn't buy into it. But eventually, you hear enough stories that you realize that reality probably isn't quite as solid. I am really grounded person, and so my experience is if I have something that's a little paranormal, I'm going to know the difference between my normal daily life and that, because I just am pretty grounded. But a lot of people just have a lot of very strange experiences, and I try not to doubt anyone's experience. It's their experience, not mine. I'm not the truth sheriff of Bigfoot experiences.
Right.
I just give them a forum to tell their story. So I think I was just very open-minded about just listening and just hearing what they had to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I guess it was hard for me about the Bigfoot thing, because I'd heard the stories, but when I started hearing stories from people that would never lie to me,
right?
I think that's what started to change my outlook on that, because I'm like, yeah, this big furry creature running around the woods, yeah, it's probably a bear or something else. Misidentification is basically what I thought it was, until I started hearing stories from people that I know, I care about, and they're just stand-up human beings. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe I need to, really pay attention. And then I guess that's what kind of helped me, over that little hump of being a little skeptical. But now that I've had the encounter, well, you can't tell me I'm wrong, because I know what I saw, So I'm definitely a knower and no longer a believer. So there's that.
Well, my initiation was Scott Nelson with the Sierra Sounds. So I spent 6 hours with him filming. So, I had no reason to doubt that those sounds, I mean, and they don't say 100% for sure that those sounds are from Bigfoot because they didn't see Bigfoot
Right.
making the sounds. But they think, that it's probably the sounds of Bigfoot. And, after hearing him speak about that for 6 hours, I mean, I had no doubt that this was something that was real. This wasn't just a made up thing.
Right.
And then as I started, working or giving interviews and with other people, it's like it became more real and more real and more real to me. That these weren't just, and no one, honestly, I've interviewed very few people that I thought was just making it up. They just were too sincere with what they were saying. A couple of people, I kind of cut them off, or I didn't even, air the show. A few people, just because I didn't feel like that it was authentic. But most of the people I've interviewed, I mean, they were just so sincere, and the emotion that goes with it, it was just, it was either, traumatizing or exciting, exhilarating, but shocking almost always, because they're unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm like you, Brandy believes the same way, like we weren't there for that encounter. So who are we to say that didn't happen to you? And I've witnessed things in my life that people would, normal people would be like, there's no way, but I swear on my life, my children's life, it has happened, so we're of that belief as well, just
Yeah, I think we go through all the steps of trying to debunk any type of encounters or experiences. We try to do that even with people who are telling us encounters. We're like, well, did this happen or did this happen? And then when we've exhausted all that, we're like, well, there it is.
Right.
Thousands of people cannot all be lying.
No.
Right.
And we're really good friends with like Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He's in chat, and his encounter, it's awful. Now his is not about flesh and blood, it morphed into something demonic.
Something totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had him on the show, and it was a fascinating show. It was, and there again, it was like, it was so real still in his mind, in his sharing of that experience. And that was one of the few that I've had that took on that form, that look.
Yeah. And that's scary, and then, again, you hear about people getting zapped, Martin Groves is a good friend of ours, and, and that's happened to him at the LBL as well. And, it's like, not everybody's lying. There's something going on out there,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Let's move into, let's go back on the alien thing, because I have a big interest in the aliens. What is your beliefs, your thoughts about CE5?
I don't have any thoughts about CE5.
Because some people are, like, no, you're opening up doors you might not be able to shut, so it's like, is it like I don't know, to me, I feel like it's no different than meditating and in a way with.
Well, I think in our mind we can definitely travel to places that that we don't experience here. And I think you really do need to be a pretty grounded person before you venture too far, because you can get kind of lost into, I wouldn't say la la land, but you can go into places that can cause your sense of groundedness to be so imbalanced, I would say, that it's difficult to come back. So I think you just have to be cautious.
Well, yeah, I would think that if you're out there meditating in the middle of a field or wherever you're at, I mean, we talk about it all the time of opening yourself up, and that bad things can sneak their way in. And I think that's just another form of it. I don't think I would open myself up like that trying to speak to aliens. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
I haven't tried that. And, speaking to aliens directly or anything like that. Now, I do ask a lot of questions, but I don't I don't channel or anything like that. I don't like connect with an entity or being, but I do a lot of intuitive work and ask a lot of questions. But I work more like, I look at it more like a universal mind thing, kind of like a larger database, of information. And it's all kind of present there, more like the holographic universe model. It's kind of the way that I see it. And I have asked a lot of questions about aliens. As a matter of fact, at one point I did this remote viewing session. It was kind of interesting. I used to do this intuitive night, and with remote viewing, you do it blindly. You don't know what your question is. So I had a group of people there, and I don't even know the topics. They just write a question on a 3x5 card, turn it over, hand it to me. I put numbers on the back, shuffle them up. I don't know who's asked the question. I don't know what the question is. All I have is a 4-digit number. So this one night, I'm connecting with the question, and immediately when I came out, I didn't look at the question. I just drew these 4 symbols. One was a tower. One was a tunnel, like an entrance to a tunnel. One was a pod, like it held something, with a top and a bottom, both. And then the other one, what was it? There were 4 things. A tower, it was arches, almost looked like the McDonald's arches, that were there. So when I turned the question over, it was asking, what is on the moon? And I think, well, I got that one wrong. That was, we can check that one off, because I just didn't think that it was true. And how would we ever verify it? And I'm big on verifying what I look at, trying hard to know for sure. So I just took that with a grain of salt and handed it back to him. But I kept the drawing of those symbols. Within a couple of days, I was at a UFO conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. There was a book vendor there that I knew well. So I walked up to him and I said, hey, do you know of any books that talk about structures on the moon? And he goes, yeah. And he pulled out a book by Ingo Swann, one of the great remote viewers. And it was a book called Penetration. And it was about a program he got involved with that he did not know what he was remote viewing. He was put into an underground bunker to do this job. He was paid to do it. And he just did remote viewing session after remote viewing session. And eventually he guessed that it was the moon. But, but in that book that I took home, I opened it up and there were 2 pages of drawings that he had of structures on the moon. And guess what? All 4 of my drawings were in his book. So that was some kind of neat verification that there's something on the moon. This, be the other side of the moon. But now, they have so much ability to see things. I can't imagine there actually being something there that we wouldn't know about. And, how is it hidden? I don't know for sure. But that was back in the 90s. Maybe, maybe it was there then. Maybe it's not there now. Who knows? But I did see that. And at the time that Ingo Swann was remote viewing the moon, he saw aliens there. And the aliens began to realize that he was remote viewing them. They became aware of him. There was that kind of interaction. Yeah. And sometimes that happens when, we've all said, before the phone rings, we know who it is on the other end. Right. We know someone, we'll start thinking about someone and then they call us. There's all that sort of thing. I think that we're all just sort of interconnected. So I don't think that's uncommon to have that kind of thing. And I think with Bigfoot too, if there's some kind of information channel that needs to be said, we might hear something from Bigfoot. Hasn't happened to me on a personal level. Before I did get involved with the Bigfoot though, someone did tell me a kind of an intuitive message. And they said, oh, and by the way, this is brought to you by Bigfoot. And that was before the first conference. That was before the first interview. And that was before the Bigfoot thing took off. Now, whether Bigfoot actually told her that or to tell me, or whether it was just symbolically she could see my future and see that Bigfoot was going to be part of it, I don't know. It's hard to define that. And I try not to do that much because I'd probably be wrong. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. What made you get into metaphysics? Like, did you just...
I've always had a curious mind. Just really always had a curious mind.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of prophetic dreams, along the way. And I just, was probably a little bit bored. And so just started going down that line. I started reading a lot. And it was really popular. It was the 80s, It was really popular. I had a little time on my hands to be able to spend some time doing that. So I started doing a program, did a lot of exercises to be more intuitive and be more aware. Became very self-aware, that's kind of get yourself out of the way first.
Right.
And then found that I was pretty good at it. And I was a health intuitive for a lot of years, and there was a big market to teach people how to be more aware of their body and be more
Yeah.
sensitive to their system.
Mhm.
And so I traveled all over and did that for a really long time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I believe, people that, do good things, like, you did good things with it. I know a lot of people believe that, it's a sin and this and that. A lot of religions do believe that, but I don't. I think if you do it and you do it for good reasons and not self-gain, I think it's okay.
I think it's a skill that we've lost. I mean, I don't even put it into a spiritual realm anymore. I remember when that rude awakening came to me once, because I was kind of introduced to this all through, more of a spiritual process. And, it all had this, moral fiber to it. And then one day I was teaching this class, and we were looking at future things. And I saw clear as day this woman in the future. She was looking at her hand, and then she kicked off her shoe, and she was looking at her toes and looking at her hand, her toes. And I think, what in the world is she doing? I don't know what this is about, but that's what I had to write down, because it was the only thing that came in for her future. So the next week we came back to class, and I described what I saw for her. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, where you're looking at your hand, your feet, your hand, your feet, you kick off your shoe. And she goes, yes, I did. And she started describing that she was at work. She worked at a little metaphysical bookstore, actually. She was at work, and they started talking about the shape of toes and fingernails. And she kicked off her shoe, and they were comparing. And her and this other woman were comparing their hands and their nails, and then they were comparing their feet. And it's like, it happened. At that moment, I realized, I don't think that's really so profoundly spiritual.
Right.
It was just a moment. It was a snapshot in time of her future. That's all it was. Yeah. So I started kind of backing away from the idea that this was anything other than just, it's there. You can see it if you want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And here again, I always taught it with a strong moral fiber, because you don't want to invade things or take advantage of people, because you could, if you can see things about them. So you have to be morally correct if you use this properly. Yeah.
Right. I want to jump back to the time where you were doing hypnosis on people who alien abductions. Let's just go there. Did you ever find at one time somebody that you put under, and then you're like, wow, I can't believe that this happened to this person?
The first one I did, oh my gosh, terrified me. I did not comprehend the level of terror that that person was going to experience under hypnosis. And even though I'd done a lot of cases, to calm her down was difficult to do. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to accomplish that. But I did finally, to be able to pull her out of that scene that was terrifying her so drastically. And and I was just like a basket case. There was another person there with me, a friend of hers, and I was glad she was there too, but it was just absolutely traumatizing to her. So I had to learn how to gently take them in and be able to give them instruction to be able to come back out of that easily, to pull them in and out of those scenes, or to make it an objective experience rather than so emotional. In her case, she had memory of a blue light, outside in the yard, that's very common. And she suspected that she was an abductee, but she didn't know 100% for sure. So I was the first time she had been hypnotized regarding this issue. And it was my first abductee to hypnotize.
Wow.
So when she went in, we slowly found out, she was abducted. She was on the craft. And what they were doing it was a needle coming at her. That was what was terrifying her so much. And they were sticking a needle in her. And she was just absolutely terrified, of what they were doing at that time.
Wow.
I'm sure it was very painful as it was just scary. She was in a strange place with these weird looking people, and they were, needle. Maybe she had a genuine fear of needles anyway. I don't know that for sure. But then also by the end of the session, they were showing her this craft and telling her, she had a mission that eventually, she was going to help people, guide people to this craft and help them get on the craft, and they would be taking people off planet, so she kind of ended on a little bit better note. but yeah, it's to answer your question, it's very much surprising to me of the level of emotion that she was experiencing.
Wow. That's scary. Now, have you talked to people who have like implants? Because you hear about that as well.
Yeah, a lot of people that have had implants. And also that's one of the things I did intuitively with people sometimes was to locate, to see if they had an implant in their body and to locate it, if they did. And, not everyone can afford to go have surgery and check and see if that's there, or an x-ray to check and see if it's there. I mean, that's just not something that's easily done. But a few people, yeah, it proved out, they did have an implant of some sort. There was something there. And in the location that I saw. Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting. Why do you think some people are more, susceptible, I guess, to be abducted than others,
Definitely. And, I don't know what the criteria is that makes one person more susceptible than another. It does seem to run in families to some degree. But, and also those people tend to be far more psychic than other people. That's another correlation. They tend to be sensitive, all the way around to some degree too. And most of the time the contact they've had has been all their lives. It didn't start, at 80, it's been their entire life. They've had some form of contact. They may not always remember it, but at some point it may come out. And
aliens scare me. They really do. Like, I feel like, just the thought of coming down and, being abducted or anything like that, that scares me. That really does. Give me a ghost or Bigfoot any day.
Yeah, exactly. Bigfoot isn't anywhere near as scary as these things that can make you not even be aware and float away and go into a craft and you don't even know how you got there, and then you've got missing time. And even though missing time goes with Bigfoot sometimes too. So
yeah, it does. It does. Do you get a lot of reports with people with Bigfoot with the missing time?
I wouldn't say a lot, but enough that it made me realize that it was definitely part of
something. There's something there.
And I say it's part of the phenomena, but I don't know if it's just Bigfoot or if the people that have these experiences also tend to have, all the whole gamut. They see ghosts, they have alien contact often, or at least see craft of some sort. They're the ones who can see the orbs. They're the ones that also can see Bigfoot. It seems to be the person that seems to be open or sensitive to those experiences in some way. Not everybody, but a lot of them are.
Right. Wow. What are you thinking, Brandy? You got something going through your head? I can see.
There's just I had questions about the hypnosis, and then we're on to something else. I was like, wait a minute. And it's also interesting. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And well, a lot of people do experience time loss, and I get it. But did you ever use the hypnosis to find out what's happening to these people during their time loss?
I don't think I have done that. I would love to do that. I would love to take someone in, with the time loss and see if there is actually any part of memory that is there subconsciously. And sometimes it may not be time loss. It may be a time warp, that we measure time, but time may not be that way, so it may just be some kind of a strange time warp. If you talk to the guy from Marley Woods the other day, I don't know if he described to you about those objects on the table that would move, but they had those high-speed cameras and they could not detect any movement. It would just appear and disappear. It would disappear and then just appear someplace else. It was just like instantaneous. I think maybe sometimes time is like that. When we say there's missing time, it's like, the clock says this, but really for them in whatever space they're in, there may not have been anything that occurred. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. There's been a few times that we've, I have a laser and we'll point up at the sky and stuff, and we get replies, and that just blows me away, because what looks like a star and then it's blinking back to you. I mean, it's just, to me, that it's just amazing. Like, you can just go right outside and, lot of times you see them and there they are.
Exactly. And you know, another experiment I did back in the day when I was doing a lot of UFO stuff, I started thinking, because I knew that, you know, you're in the metaphysical world, you know, there is the philosophy that, you know, that we draw things into us, or that we create, you know, a reality or whatever. I never bought into that hook, line, and sinker, but I did have some awareness that you could probably project something and maybe get some visual back. So I had a group of people stare at this thing that looked kind of like a UFO craft, but you couldn't tell it was a UFO craft in the way that they were looking at it. And when they were to do that 20 minutes every day for like 2 weeks, but they didn't know what we were up to. They just were to look at that. Then we met at my house and we looked at it for 20 minutes, and we went outside and looked up in the sky, and it was a sunny, beautiful, you know, sunny Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even look at what was there. I just click, taking pictures. And when it came back, there it was. It wasn't a real distinct UFO, but it was definitely clear. The very same, like, cylindrical craft that we had been looking at in the image formed itself in a different way, in a different shade than the clouds were. So that was kind of an interesting project to see mm-hmm. how, when you talked about the lights, you know, responding to you, you know, I think all of life kind of does that to mm-hmm. some degree.
Yeah. And, you know, my very first encounter was with a friend of ours who does the CE5. And, you know, she's the one that kind of told us, you know, with the laser lights and this and that. But there's somebody in chat too that was sitting with us that night that we actually watched, and it looked like a star. However, you know, she would circle it a couple times and then it would blink at us twice. But we actually watched it like 5 different craft lights come out of it. Mm-hmm. Like, how cool is that? Like, it was like a mothership, you know, type thing.
Right. And I know this group that would meditate, they would go out sky watching and they'd meditate. And when they did that, you know, there would be craft show up. Yeah. And when they didn't meditate, you know, generally it was just like, maybe they'd be there, maybe they wouldn't. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun stuff. You have several questions here. We'll get to them real quick. First one. Volta BS asks, question, do people think that Bigfoot is Nephilim? And if you do, when did you start believing this?
I personally don't think so. I mean, I'm not one to really put a hardcore judgment either way on that. I don't know. And just because I just don't lean that direction, I guess. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. And I only have the interviews, you know, I haven't seen a Bigfoot myself. But I just don't lean that direction to believe that that's probably what they are, but I don't know what they are.
Sure. All righty.
That's fair.
Yep, absolutely. Courtney McGee asks, a weird question, but how many of them thought it was a dream or a nightmare before they were put under your hypnosis?
A lot of people thought that maybe it was a dream because they didn't have enough solid memory to know anything. But they suspected that more happened. You know, sometimes there would be marks on the body. You know, there's a scoop mark sometimes, mm-hmm. or scratches. You know, would happen, and they'd have, you know, something in their hair, like a leaves in their hair. Is like they were somewhere during the night because, or their clothes. You know, their night clothes were put on backwards or something like that. It's like something happened, but they didn't know what happened. And they would often just have, you know, that sense that something was the light on the outside. That was the only thing they maybe remembered. But oftentimes it was a dream. And some of them, I think, probably are dreams, you know. Mm-hmm. Under hypnosis, sometimes they may just not remember anything at all that happened either. Sure. That happened, you know, many times. But some people really did get a lot of detailed information, and there again, we can't verify if that is true. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that eased their mind, you know, to have that information, and sometimes it made it worse because now they have to deal with the fact that, you know, oh, I really did have this experience. But by the time they come to me, by the time they do hypnosis with it, they're ready to have some answers. You know, it's bothering them more to not know the answer than it is to know. So absolutely.
William asks, do you have any speculations about aliens, whether they're extraterrestrial or interterrestrial inside the planet?
Well, I have the same opinion like I had on Bigfoot. I really don't know, but I lean more toward not extraterrestrial, probably more, and I don't say interdimensional. I don't even know if they're that. I don't know what they are. I think they share our world here. I think they share our reality. I think they've always been here. But I don't think they behave in the way that our perception, at least, allows us to believe that they're part of our reality. But I think they're around us all the time, kind of like Ghost and Bigfoot. I think they're always around. They're always here. But we may not be able to see or perceive them, or they may be able to turn on or off. I don't know that for sure, but just from all of the years of studying, all of the years of talking to people, all of the books that you read, it just kind of leans more that direction in my mind.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. There's another question here. Oh, looks like this is on the paranormal side. So Barbara Green asked, what do you think would cause paranormal activity to spike in a home suddenly? What would you suggest to someone on the receiving end of this activity?
Well, I don't know. You guys have probably answered this more than me because you've done a lot more paranormal research than I have. What would cause it to spike suddenly? I mean, I would probably first do a survey of what's going on in their life. It's kind of what's happening. I remember doing this one interview, and this was kind of a bit of a shock. They were having some poltergeist experiences, and they lived across the street from a crematorium. And what they began to notice, these are 3 college students, and I mean, like dishes would be moved out of the cabinets kind of thing, doors open, all kinds of strange things were happening. Lights would be left on when they knew they turned them off, that kind of stuff. But they started noticing that every time they could smell that the crematorium had burned that day, that's when the poltergeist activity happened. And so I think sometimes there are things that we might not correlate. If they hadn't had that happen over and over again, they might not have realized that there was any connection. And we still don't know 100% for sure that was a connection. But it did seem odd that they did notice that. They didn't have the activity unless the crematorium was burning. And so it was funny because then later on in that same interview, she was talking about having some paranormal experiences. And it was many years later. She was married. They'd built a new house in this new subdivision that didn't have any other houses out there. It was just their house. And it went 2 years, no paranormal activity, no ghost activity in their house whatsoever during that first 2 years. Then someone bought the lot behind them and started digging to build the foundation and stuff to build a house.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden their house became haunted. I mean, they started seeing people, everyone in the house that was seeing, people walking down the hall, you get that glimpse of someone walking down the hall.
Right.
And they even started identifying as to who it was, or they'd think someone came in the room and they weren't there. They'd be talking to them, turn around and think it was a family member and no one was there. So all of these weird things started happening. And I said, well, that's odd because in the crematorium, you're basically, just like tearing or ripping, the fiber of a body apart. And and when they started digging, and we don't know, there was some, burial mounds out there. We don't know for sure. I'm sure they didn't know it or they wouldn't have been digging, but we don't know what they were digging up, as they were moving the soil. So I kind of started correlating those two things, that this kind of odd activity or paranormal activity might come from something that disturbs the fiber, of our physical reality. Then I started looking at, the nuclear power plants and nuclear things. And when we first began doing the nuclear testing, that's when Roswell crash started happening and other crashes happened, or other UFOs would show up immensely during these nuclear tests. Which what does nuclear do? I mean, it rips apart the fabric of our our physical reality. So it's like there's something about that. I can't put my finger on it. It's this that intuitive and kind of like feel about it, that I think that look and see, have you done any kind of restructure to your house? Did you tear a porch off? Did you rip out a closet? Are you redoing the walls? Just look and see if there's something that maybe you have disturbed the peace of whatever it is that's suddenly come into play.
Yeah, it could be a birthday or an anniversary of something, or just
Yeah.
It's just a lot to it. A whole lot to it. Let's see. We got through all the questions. Awesome. This has been fun.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I go back and forth. Like I said, we told you before, it's like we're sitting around just BSing.
And I still have another question. So
okay.
hang on.
Okay.
So let's go back to hypnosis. Like I said, I had a million questions about this. I did. So I've been holding my mouth.
Yeah.
And okay, have you ever thought about doing past life regression? Have you ever thought about that?
Oh, I've done a lot of past life regressions.
Really?
When I first started, I wanted to be able to do that better. In my training, I learned how to deal with a lot of things, but the past life regression part was not one, or regression part wasn't one that I had solidly learned, I felt. So I just opened up and volunteered. If someone would work with me for an extended period of time, just do past life regressions with them. And I had a lot of volunteers to do that. So I got pretty well versed with it. And it was really interesting because as you could do many of those, you start seeing patterns, in their lives, and you can really get to the heart of a lot of the issues that they were dealing with even presently. It wasn't like we were doing therapy with it, but you just could see the patterns, that it was just, that was a really interesting thing. But yeah, I did many of those.
Wow.
Right.
I find that fascinating too. I'm just like, when, because people like have memories of things of a time they're not even living in. And then to do something like you would do, that's just fascinating to me.
It is, but one of the most convincing things, it's like, you remember after, the terrorist attack, 9/11,
right.
There have been all of these people, of course, the sudden death is usually when there's a lot of people come back really fast because it was a sudden death.
Yeah.
There were these little kids that could literally tell their parents exactly, what fire truck they were on. And there's just so much detailed information these kids had. That remembered being there, on 9/11, and was suddenly taken out, and then was suddenly back, really fast, as children.
Yeah, I find all of it amazing. I actually feel like, and I had somebody else tell me one time, it was actually Sarah Lamos told me that I'd always feel like, I don't know, I read a lot of stuff on Romania. Why Romania out of all, and she had told me, and I believe it because of my interest that I've always had, that I was a peasant in Romania. And so interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, those were just really fascinating days of exploring a lot of those, what lurks within our minds that we don't consciously remember, but that you can access, you can get to. Through hypnosis or even through, a lot of the intuitive work too.
Yeah. Interesting. William says, I remember being a bride in a 16th century arranged marriage, and I looked up at the person and found them years ago. So he looked the person up. That's interesting. That's really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. I missed the question. You do have another question here. JD Smooth asks, Linda, what do you think about orbs, blue or green?
Well, I don't know that I have an opinion about the blue or green portion of it. I think orbs, I'm starting to believe that orbs are intelligent in some fashion and probably might even be a disguise for another entity of some sort. And that's maybe a means of their traveling, and then they can become whatever they are, become a different form, at some time. But I think they're intelligent, and I think it's just a means for them to travel.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Brandy, you have anything else?
No, I'm going to quit because I could go probably another hour. So I'm going to quit.
Right.
I'm going to quit for now. But that's okay. I mean, Linda, we really need to have you back on. Maybe just to do a panel and just ask questions and just have a discussion about all these things and what we think about them, because you are a wealth of information. And
I've been in it a long time.
Right. And there's so many more things that I want to ask. So we really need to do that.
Let's just plan to. Yeah. Sounds good. It's been fun.
Agree. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. And quickly, thank you to Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Tennessee Ridge Runner, and be kind. You guys are great, all of you.
You
Everybody.
rock.
Great. Yes. So be sure everybody to tune into Paranormal Roundtable. I think Josh will be coming on around 9ish or so. And tomorrow night, Paranormal Paul, 7 p.m. Central. And then Josh, I believe, comes on at 8. And then Sunday.
No. Late night with Bigfoot and Rob.
That's right.
Yeah. We're going to be there.
Yep, we'll be on. We'll be there with Rob. And then Sunday is you and Randy.
Right. 5 p.m. Central, Truth or Tinfoil. So make sure you tune in and we'll see everybody later.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.